Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm really excited to be joined by Cam, and we're going to be talking about Wimbledon, reviewing it, talking about all the big moments in the tournament, and some of the more disappointing moments as always as well, because we like talking about that. So you let us down. Cam, how you doing?
Yeah, good mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good. So let's start off with let's put you on the spot. How many slams is Alcaraz going to win? No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. No, you have to answer that. Is Alcaraz going to be the GOAT? No, I'm just joking. But
Oh yeah, that's the best question.
next question, please.
Yeah.
No, I mean, how surprised were you about Alcaraz winning? Who did you actually pick, by the way, for the men's and women's winners? Who were your picks?
I picked Djokovic for the men's, and then
Yeah.
I picked Sabalenka for the ladies. So
Oh, we had the same. Nice. Yeah, we're
yeah,
both wrong.
yeah.
But it's okay.
Well, so yeah, I mean we're far off though. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
true. True.
we could
Yeah, I
have
think.
picked could
Yeah,
pick worse.
crazy. No. But yeah, I mean, how shocked were you about Alcaraz though going into the final? Because you watched, I'm assuming you watched most of, if not all, of Djokovic and Alcaraz's matches leading up to the final.
Yeah,
I mean, what were you thinking before then? Like, what was your gut telling you in terms of how they both looked? Were you surprised by what you saw in the end?
yeah. Like I think I picked Djokovic in 4 or 5,
Mm.
just because it was on grass. If it was on a different surface, if it was on clay, I probably would have. Well, after what happened to the French, I might have gone Alcaraz because of what he played in those first 2 sets. But no, I think I was surprised. Again, I said this during all last week almost.
Mm.
Is like every time I feel like Alcaraz is a year ahead of everything that I think. Like last year when I was like, the US Open this year, maybe
Mm.
not. I think maybe next year he'll do something, and then he wins it last year, and then he becomes number one last year, and he everything that he does is sort of like a year earlier than I think it will be,
Yeah,
or at least like a year or like a little earlier than expected.
yeah,
Um, like we went to Wimbledon, and I thought, well, it's Djokovic. I thought her catch would be the hardest opponent for him. Then it was until the final, and then with Alcaraz, I thought, oh well, he's going to play the big servers, which were a problem last year, or
yeah,
was a problem last year with Struff in the first round, and then he loses to Sinner in the fourth, and you're kind of like, okay, well, how much has he changed in a year? He's only played Queen's Club since, and he won that, but
yeah.
he had troubles at the very start of that. So yeah, it's just sort of, yeah, you would have thought experience on grass would have made a difference, but it nearly did. Djokovic almost won the second, but yeah, it's just insane. He's insane. He's crazy.
Yeah, I was. It's interesting because both winners, right, were super inexperienced. Like Vondrousova, I think, had won like 4 matches on grass
Mm.
before going into Wimbledon. Alcaraz had played like 11 matches going into Wimbledon on grass. So it's just like, what's going on? It's just crazy
Mm.
these guys have come through. I mean, obviously Vondrousova is a bit older. She's got experience, etc. I get that. But with
Yeah,
Alcaraz, it was like, okay, well, we get that. It looks like to the eye anyway that you're a generational talent. And if you stay fit, you're going to win a few more slams. I mean, he's already won 2 and he's
yeah,
only 20 years old, which is like what Rafa did.
yeah,
But it's like, okay, well, on grass against Djokovic, who's just won the last 4 Wimbledons, he's going for an 8th record Wimbledon to match Fed. He's never lost in a Wimbledon final since 2013 against Andy Murray. No
mm-hmm.
big four, no non-big four players won Wimbledon since 2002. Since your
Mm-hmm.
favorite Leighton Hewitt won it, so it's like,
Yeah,
how is someone going to come along and do it? But I
yeah,
almost
and like
feel like you're gone.
all the guys that beat Djokovic too are like Query and Burdick and all these big servers,
Yeah,
and like besides Murray and Djokovic, like Federer, Nadal, Murray, they're all big servers, and Alcaraz's serve is not the weapon, which is again why I thought her catch would be the toughest test for the whole thing until then Alcaraz changed that.
yeah. I mean, her catch. To be fair, I mean, you would have watched that match. He wasn't that far off. To be fair, he
Yeah.
should have really won the first set against Djokovic. He
Yep.
had a 6-3 up in the first set tiebreaker, and the second set, I think he was tiebreaker. He was 5-4 up on his serve, and then
Yep.
he lost the next 2 points, and then obviously lost to 8-6 again. And those 2 tiebreakers, I mean, if he plays them a bit better, he wins. But his serve is just so clutch on grass in his net game and transition game. But sometimes his ground strokes just look. I'm just
Yeah.
you have to tear your hair out. Sometimes it's just, especially the forehand. It's like, what is going on with it? But
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean he wasn't far off, and I think he has a really good chance if he can just improve like incrementally some parts of his game because yeah, apart from obviously Alcaraz beating Djokovic, he was the toughest test. I mean Sinner,
yeah,
I don't think proved to be as hard a test. He played pretty well in periods against Djokovic, but like he just wasn't clinical at all
yeah,
really. So that was a bit of a shame. But yeah, I mean Alcaraz though, I mean the fact that he won the way he did as well and like turned it around and how important do you think because we were both watching it live? What do you think was like was they a specific turning point at the tiebreaker in the second set where Djokovic had won his last 15 and then had a set point, didn't take it, lost it, or that 26-minute game, which like I'd never seen that
yeah,
before in my life. I could not believe. I was watching it thinking, how many minutes have gone? Like they weren't showing it on screen, and it was like I think it was like 12th juice or something, and like seventh
yeah,
breakpoint opportunity for Alcaraz, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Like it's just crazy, and I could tell Djokovic was getting fed up. He was like, because when you're serving, even though they showed the stat after it, which I think showed Alcaraz had run like a kilometer more than Djokovic during that game. I was
yeah,
just thinking though, but as a server, it takes a lot more out of you. I feel because like mentally,
yeah,
you're thinking like you're under pressure as well. So there's that nervous energy that burns you up, burns through you, and then also like okay, I need to pick my spots. Then first serve, second serve, and just the motion of serving. I feel like it's quite taxing,
yeah,
compared to like a bit like as a returner. So I think, and he was trying to serve on volley as well towards the end of that, which takes a lot out of you as well. So
yeah,
and you could tell because the next game after that, when he was serving at the back end of that um, set, he just like was like done. He just looked
mm,
absolutely spent. Like it was like he just couldn't. He could barely like walk almost after that, which was crazy. But
yeah,
yeah, what for you? What was the turning point? Was there a turning point, or was it just like multiple inflection points?
yeah. I mean, like the second set tiebreak, like that if that goes to Djokovic, I mean, I think Alcaraz admitted it. I think everyone would say that Djokovic goes up 2 sets to love. Maybe Alcaraz wins the third, but coming back from 2 sets to love down in a final of Wimbledon, the first set was crazy. I mean, the same thing happened in the women's final. As soon as Jabeur went up 4-2, the amount of people, and you probably get this too, the amount of people in the chat that just go, this match is over. And then you're like, well, it's not really. Same thing happened. Six was what, 5-love first set, Djokovic. Everyone's like, Alcaraz, he's not going to get this. It's like, okay. And then the second set, it was, hold. And then you get to the tie break. Djokovic got the set point. You go, okay, well, if he goes up 2-love, maybe we get four. But then he wins the set. And then I thought, oh, well, Djokovic, he'll bring it back together in the third. Like, there's no way he'll take it more serious. And then he's down. He plays that marathon game, goes down. And I'm like, what's good? Like, how, like, it wasn't like Alcaraz caught
Yeah,
fire after the second. It was just Djokovic completely like that. It was, yeah, the third set was so weird. And then, he came back in the fourth, which you'd expect. And then early in the fifth, before he broke his racket, you thought, well, there was chances on both sides.
yeah,
And,
there was. Yeah, there's break points in
Djokovic,
the first three games for both players,
yeah,
aren't there? I
yeah.
remember, yeah,
So
yeah,
Djokovic gets a break there. You think, oh, well, he's going to get it done, but he doesn't. And then I thought, Alcaraz breaking early in the fifth. You thought, oh, well, there's going to be a chance Djokovic gets back because, how do you're only up 2-1 in the fifth with a break. You got to hold on for that.
hmm.
But then he held on, and you're just like, how does he do this? So I would say second set tiebreak. If that goes to Djokovic, we're probably not as excited about how crazy the final was. It's probably four setter
Yeah,
where Alcaraz maybe makes it interesting, and maybe there's a fourth set tiebreak or something. But yeah, once it went to 1-1, and then you got the break in the third, you thought, okay, we got a match here now.
yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, and the funniest thing is that third set, like Djokovic he just had one of those sets where he just was like completely off it. It's really
Yeah,
weird, and he lost at 6-1. And I'm like, whoa! I don't remember the last time that he lost a set at Wimbledon 6-1. Like I can't remember like to mind.
yeah,
Like it was crazy to even think about, and especially after the first set that Alcaraz played, where like Djokovic, it was quite reminiscent of the French Open semi-final where Djokovic came out the
hmm
blocks really quickly, and
yeah,
Alcaraz, I think he was nervous, and I didn't feel like he was nervous in the first set. I just felt like he just wasn't playing very well. I just felt
yeah,
like he
yeah,
just wasn't. He was struggling to really handle Djokovic's game straight away. I felt like the rhythm wasn't there. He took a while to get going,
yeah,
um, because it didn't look like he was super worried or anything. He was kind of just like okay, this is a beatdown in the first set, but he kind of just regrouped himself. And you're right, he doesn't have a
Yeah,
massive serve, but what he did really well in the final was he did serve pretty big. Like he was serving like
yeah,
130 miles per hour. Um, and the funniest thing for me was that like Djokovic, he only served two aces the whole final, and
mm,
I think Alcaraz was making so many returns, and he basically took a leaf out of Djokovic's book, and he's been doing it throughout the whole of Wimbledon, which is just saying, you know what, sometimes on return, I maybe need to take a little bit off and just
yeah,
trust myself to go deep down the middle, which is like Djokovic's bread and butter. And he was making so many returns. I think Djokovic wasn't expecting it, to be honest.
yeah,
And I think he's averaging like 11 aces per match, Djokovic, and then to only serve two aces in a five-setter is like
that's,
ridiculous for someone
yeah,
who has been so good recently in terms of his spot serving and being able to serve big in big moments. So that was like really
mhm,
surprising to me because Alcaraz, the way that he's adjusted his game, I think Juan Carlos Ferrero said that like they looked at Murray and Federer and Djokovic and tried to take like parts of their game and try and
yeah,
adapt Alcaraz's game to that. And he said, I didn't think it would work so quickly. I don't think anyone did because
mm,
it was really weird. Like coming into it, it was like, well, he lost us in the last year. The big question mark over his movement, backhand slice as well,
yeah,
and his serve, like you were saying. And just like, okay, how is he going to be able to adjust?
mhm,
But the slice looks quite good. Looks really good, to be honest. He's like approaching with the slice and moving really well on it as well. He's not sliding like Djokovic and like Sinner, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that.
yeah,
I think he's more like a Rafa mover on grass. But um, yeah, it was like I just couldn't believe it. And even Djokovic said after, didn't he? He goes, "I actually agree with what people are saying. Like he has a part of like me. He has the best of like all three worlds, like me, Federer, and
yeah,
Nadal." And he said like there's really obvious strengths and weaknesses to Nadal and Federer's game, but he's like with
mhm,
Carlos, he seems like a very complete player. He's like, I've never played a player like that before in my life. Um,
yeah,
what do you think? I mean, do you think he's the most complete 20-year-old? I mean, we're obviously not, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and people can peak at this time as well. Like Rafa,
mhm,
I think it's safe to say, even though he won two Grand Slams last year and he's got longevity, I think we can say his peak, I felt like it was a bit earlier than Djokovic and Federer's.
yeah,
Whereas like Djokovic is a bit later, same with Fed as well.
mhm.
Do you think Alcaraz is he the most complete 20-year-old? Do you think that we've seen?
But yeah, I mean, he's got. I think like you can break down. You can probably pick a weakness with if you want to just pick with. Oh, well, even if you want to put Murray in there, those four guys,
Yeah,
you can say like well, besides Rafa, who I mean, Rafa maybe was at the start of his career was just sort of very clay heavy, and then he struggled
yeah,
on faster surfaces. Even to this day, still struggles on indoor courts. Um, Federer had a temper problem at a young age, figured that out. But then the one-handed backhand was a problem
yeah,
for when Rafa was able to expose that.
exactly. Yeah,
Djokovic had fitness issues early, would retire matches due to fatigue and stuff like that. Maybe like mentality as well, if you want to add that as well. And then Murray had anger issues at that age, whereas Alcaraz doesn't seem like he has. Yeah, he's had injuries, and he had the cramping, which I think now nobody can talk about because he played five setter
yeah,
longer match,
yeah,
and he didn't look physically tired at all. So he's had injuries, but then you're like, yeah, he's got no visible weakness. And then you look at all the other guys that have come through over the last 10 years that are, from,
mm,
they want to talk about the next generation guys, the Medvedevs and the Zverevs and stuff. I mean, a guy like Chorich, like
mm.
he kind of has that kind of completeness, but then Chorich doesn't, well, he's been injured too, but then it's like you think
It's an
there are
all-round
guys
game,
that
but
have
it's
come
not the
along.
same level, is it? It's like,
Yeah, he doesn't have maybe the the intensity that Alcaraz does, or
mm,
the aggressive game. Um, but there are probably have been guys that have come along that have got the whole package, but then for whatever reason just doesn't work.
yeah,
And I guess beating Djokovic is so like you beat Djokovic at Wimbledon, so impressive. And then you do hear like the excuse of, well, the 20-year-old beats up a 36-year-old. Well, of course that's meant to happen, but you're like, but it doesn't happen. Like, why is
it hasn't
Tsitsipas and
happened.
Medvedev
Yeah,
not
that's the
doing it,
thing.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's
So
the thing, right? No one's like the last time really that someone did it was you said, okay, well, Medvedev 2021 US Open, but you just felt like circumstances played a little bit of a part there, like the Canada
yeah, it
Slam, and he was
was an
really
Olympic
fatigued
year.
at the end. the Olympics like disappointment and everything as well. So I don't want to take it away from him, but it was a bit like, was that Djokovic near his best? I'm not quite sure. And he played like a 5-set marathon against Zverev, and Zverev was playing good tennis, but you're like, okay, but you have to go before that. You have to go back to Stan, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, you have to go to Stan, and like, it's like, okay, there's no one really else, because all the people that won titles, like Cilic, for example, they didn't have to play. They played Nishikori, for example, in the final. Team, he played Zverev. Like, none of these guys actually beat a big three in a final, and that's like the point that Novak hadn't lost one in final since 2013. Like, just proves that. That's why I think people are making a big deal of it, and I think rightly so, because even when it went to 5 sets, I was like, Djokovic's going to win, because he won the 4th set as well. So I'm just like, he's got momentum, and my prediction was actually Djokovic in 5 sets, and I thought I was being ambitious that like we were going to even get 5 sets. And Alcaraz was like, no, like, I can do it. And I saw in your preview actually that you said about Alcaraz coming to the net, and I agreed with you. I actually said the same thing in mine, that he had to come to the net a lot. But I think he proved both of us wrong in the sense that he came to the net, I think, like half as many times as Djokovic, and he still came to the net. I think it's like 26, 27 times, something like that. But throughout the 5 sets, but he managed to somehow boss Djokovic from the back of the court, which is like almost unheard of unless your name is Rafa on a clay court. And I just couldn't believe it, to be honest with you, because it was really, really impressive to see from like someone who has so little experience on grass, but it's clearly just like the talent is just there, and he's able to just adapt. And I think Djokovic said, the biggest thing that he feels Alcaraz has of his is his adaptability, like during matches. And maybe that's what happened in the first set. He got schooled 6-1. He was like, okay, well, what do I need to change? And he changed certain things, and it worked. And you're like, okay, well, that's damn impressive, like, to do that. So, and I think Djokovic got a bit frustrated that he was able to match him in terms of physicality. Like, you could tell it was frustrating. Like, especially like he was getting, if he got drop shotted, you're like, if you're Djokovic, you're thinking, what the hell? Like, I shouldn't be getting drop shotted. Like, I'm so quick, like, across the surface. And then also, when like he's hitting an approach shot and Alcaraz is doing the sliding backhand to him, and he's like, that's my thing. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, you shouldn't be able to do that to me. So I just felt like he was getting frustrated in moments like that, and like the really good, like the returning that Alcaraz was able to pull out. Like, Djokovic is like, normally that's me, and that's why the 5th set, you're right. Like, he was 2-1 up, and you're like, okay, well, he's a break up, but he's going to have chances, not Novak. And to be fair, he kept on getting inroads in every single Alcaraz game, apart from one, I think it was. But every time, like, Alcaraz just came clutch, and he only needed 1 championship point at 40-30, and he took it. And you're like, this is not normal. Like, this isn't normal. Like, most people, they like the no double fault as well. Like, normally, like, okay, double fault, maybe there's a couple of second serves in that game, or like a bit of a streaky forehand, like, or a backhand into the net or something. You're like, oh, okay, shank. There wasn't really that in that game, and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this doesn't seem normal. And like, the only time I can think of when this stuff hasn't happened is when like Rafa and Novak and Fed won their slams, and I didn't feel like they didn't have that sort of nerves. But and that's why I think he's got that aura about him. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I reckon like something that always comes up is that, and same with, I mean, you can put Runa in there as a lesser extent, because he kind of has a lot of the same, like he ticks a lot of the same boxes as
he does.
As Alcaraz does. He's just probably was a little more less experienced, but he's also going to be a factor. But I don't think he just doesn't have mental scarring. So like when they get to that point, they're like they don't look at like the Medvedevs and Tsitsipas losses and go, oh yeah, I'm going to be in that position now. Like, oh, I'm going to be the same as Tsitsipas up 2 sets of love or whatever. Even Sinner's probably got more mental scarring than these guys, because he's been around a little longer and he's been up 2 sets of love, and last year at Wimbledon, and he's got that, like, oh well, that happened. Alcaraz hasn't had, like, he's lost to Rafa a couple of years ago in a bad way, and then you put that down to, well, that's my first time playing him, and then he comes back and he beats him, and then he got same with Djokovic, he beats him and then loses at the French and then comes back and does it again. So he never got to play Federer, so that's he doesn't have to worry about him. So it's like, he doesn't have that, like, oh, I've played this guy 5 times and he's beat me every time, like, someone like a Zverev or a Medvedev. when he plays Rafa or whatever, and you kind of just like, well, that has got to play a factor because he's only knows from those three, like the three matches he's played, he's won two of them and he lost one halfway through because he cramped up. So he doesn't come into the Djokovic matches thinking, oh, here we go again. I'm going to have to, figure out how to beat this guy. It's like, well, he's beaten him twice now. So there's no doubt. And same with Rune. I mean, Rune's beaten Djokovic too. And he's probably thinking, what are you guys complaining about? Like, why, how did you not beat him? Like, we've beaten him already. And guys like Tsitsipas who can't get a match off him or can't even get sets at times. And then you just wonder, like, that's got to be a massive, massive factor for these younger guys who just don't have that. Like, they respect the GOATs, but they don't fear them like this other generation has.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they're picking them up at the end of their careers. But then Djokovic doesn't look any worse than he did 5 years ago. Some would say he's looking better, winning 3 out of 4 in 21. And then last year he wins 1 out of the 2 that he got to play. And then this year he's won 2 out of 3. You go, well, he's not worse than 2018, 2017. He could be better. But then, I think the start of this new generation is like, I love it. I think it's just so, and if you like, I don't know if you've been watching the cricket, but it's kind of like the Bazball of the tennis world. It's like this aggressive, kind of like a little bit of Kyrgios with the showmanship and the little bit of entertainment. I know, Alcaraz doesn't mind looking at the crowd and giving, after he does a good shot, and he's kind of like, how good is that? Rune doesn't mind playing to the crowd. Whereas this other, like the guys like Medvedev and stuff, they're more, I'm just going to rally. I'm going to out rally this guy, and I'm going to grind it out. I'm not going to go for anything risky. I'm not going to try and hit a highlight shot. Whereas these young guys seem to just want to be more entertaining, but also like uber talented and all the other stuff as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's interesting like this. You're right. I think the mental scarring plays a big part, doesn't it? I think to a degree, and I do wonder, like, did we overrate maybe that generation of like Tsitsipas and Medvedev and Zverev and these guys, Berrettini, and have we overrated them, or is it just the fact that like they did play Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic? Like, to be fair, Alcaraz and Rune haven't had to play Federer for one, and two, also they played them when they were a bit younger. So I get your point when you're saying like, Djokovic probably isn't any worse, but then at the same time, I guess as they've gotten older, they've played less matches, so like they wouldn't like they were getting mental scarring probably from like Masters tournaments, getting like smashed by them, right? Whereas they only really see them now and then in a Masters tournament or like a Grand Slam, whereas they were playing like 500s and stuff as well and other bits. So I wonder whether that didn't help as well, like having to play them so many times
and having
just
3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Having 3 of them as well.
3 of them in the draw, and you got to play 2 of them to win.
It's like the volume, and then also they had Murray right in 2016 as well.
Murray,
People forget Murray 2016, Stan as well. So it's like, okay, like maybe that's why. But because it's interesting, like Zverev as a 20-year-old, he was really complete. Like people don't remember, but as a 20-year-old, he was. And then what happened is this might sound harsh, I don't feel like he's improved really at all. Like I think he basically has periods where he gets really hot, like the Olympic win. I feel like actually the 2021 US Open semi-final should have beaten Djokovic in that 5-setter. But he has a talent, but he's inconsistent because he's just not really made improvements and like tried to improve his game. He's like, my game has been good enough to beat some of these guys, like won a World Tour finals, whatever else. Made a final of the US Open 2020. So he's like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with it, and eventually I'll get one, and it hasn't quite happened for him, to be fair. Which is like a weird one because when he came through, he was like the next big thing.
Yeah, he was.
Like, Everyone was like, this is it, and it's like, no, you guys, your generation too early. It's going to be Alcaraz. Like that's what's happened. So
he was like Sebastian Korda of the mid 2010, like same thing, like the way that people are talking about Korda, because I think Korda, even though he had a terrible Wimbledon, I mean, he definitely has that similar, like he's the big serving guy.
Yeah, you're right.
Less emotional than Zverev, maybe, like a little less, shouting, but like a very similar game, similar, stature as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe
he does, He's basically Zverev when he plays proactive tennis. When there's a Zverev that plays proactive tennis, and there's a Zverev that's I'm just going to push the ball
Yeah.
because I'm scared that I'm going to make errors and I'll just rely on my serving basically, which is like crazy to see. But anyway,
Yeah.
we could talk about him for ages. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I mean, on the men's side though, so like the matches that you watched, I guess apart from well, actually, before we go on to that, I wanted to ask you for Djokovic Alcaraz as a final, as a Grand Slam final, where do you rank it? Is it in like your top 10, or is it actually, you know what, it was a great final, but recency bias, you got to take that out, and actually it maybe wasn't in terms of level and drama, wasn't up there in your top 10.
Well, drama it definitely was because, like, I think a guy like a 20-year-old kid beating Djokovic at Wimbledon semi unexpectedly, and I think a lot of people who don't watch tennis as much as we do did not see that coming because they're like, "Well, who's this guy?"
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people that kind of watched the Australian Open, and he wasn't there, so they're like, "Well, who's this number one kid?"
Exactly.
So I don't think he's not super known outside. Well, now he is, but before wasn't super known. It was like, oh, this young guy come through. So I mean, drama was there. 2008 for Wimbledon finals alone. Like I can only go off like 2008, 2009 with the Federer Roddick match. I feel like those kind of matches. Well, the 2008 match was the best quality match I've seen at Wimbledon in a final. The 2019, 2008 with Federer and Nadal, when it was just they were just hitting the most ridiculous shots. And then 2019, Djokovic wasn't great, even though he won. Federer was playing well, but then it was like kind of the drama of the final set. So I put it in terms of Wimbledon finals. I put it in my top 5. Again, it's hard with recency bias. Maybe in 2 or 3 years when we get like no good finals, we'll be like that one was really good. Because I was lucky enough that I got to stream the 2019 final, so I can still remember that.
Yeah,
and how that was more like Federer, hadn't won he played 5-set finals against Djokovic, hadn't won one. He had the championship points, he missed it, and then it went the other way. Whereas this one didn't really have Djokovic never really had a shot. To be honest, in the end, he was down, and then he got to the 5th, and then he didn't really get too close to championship point. In terms of Grand Slam finals, it's definitely better than 2020 US Open, even though that was 5 sets and dramatic. That was terrible quality. 21 French with Tsitsipas, the 5-setter there. Again, it was kind of like Djokovic came back and won. It was kind of like, it was 2 different matches, a 2-setter and a 3-setter.
Actually, I think in the 3rd set there was Djokovic tiebreak, wasn't it? And he Tsitsipas, I think, had a chance to win. I think maybe it was the 4th set. It was either 3rd or 4th set.
Third.
Yeah.
And then like I was saying this during the matches as well, during the match, it kind of felt like Team Djokovic 2020 Oz Open.
Oh, that was a good one.
Because Team had, he was up 2 sets to one team, and he had chances in the 4th.
Yeah.
And then Djokovic won the 4th and then the 5th. Whereas this time it was, Djokovic ended up losing the 5th. But it kind of felt like that. So it was up there with that.
Yeah.
Even the 2019 US Open with Nadal, Medvedev, that was like Rafa in control. Medvedev came back and then Rafa finished it off. So it's probably up there. And again, I think it'll be we're just coming off the French Open for the 2nd year in a row of another beatdown. It's kind of like, and then the Australian Open final this year was not that great. So it's the best final of the year.
Yeah.
Even last year, look at
well, the Aussie Open last year, Rafa 2 sets love down, breakdown.
Well, that's I feel like that probably tops it anyway, because that had the history of Rafa getting to the most. Also, the way he did it. So it's tough. I think we'll only find out. Maybe the US Open will be better if they play again.
Yeah,
it might be a better quality. Maybe there's because Djokovic didn't play great. Looking at the
he didn't. And stuff. He didn't.
No, it wasn't like 2 guys at their best playing this epic 5-setter. It was still like, it was kind of there were the first set was weird, and then the 3rd set was weird. So it wasn't the guys at their peak of their powers like Madrid was when they played a couple last year. So again, it's got to be up there because it's 5 sets and it's this epic, dramatic upset kind
but
of.
But really, it was rubbish. I'm just joking.
It had the potential to be rubbish after that first set. But
yeah. No, I get your point. The level wasn't quite it wasn't sky high, was it? And that's why if you look at the 2008 final, like all someone needs to do is watch the highlights and also look at the score line. I think it was like 2 tiebreakers, 3-6, like
Yeah.
2-6-4s, then whatever it was in the fifth set. So it was like super tight. This
Yeah.
one was like a seesaw, like because Alcaraz won the first and Djokovic won the first and Alcaraz second, and Djokovic third, and then whatever else, and he went like that. Or I think Alcaraz actually won 2 in a row, but second and
Yeah.
third sets. But either way, like it was like a bit of a seesaw, and ebbed and flowed definitely. But I think the significance of it was big as well. I think because
Yeah.
like
It was
I
the
didn't really,
biggest. Yeah, it was the biggest win because like all the other matches that I mentioned, Nadal beats Medvedev at the US, and then it's
yeah,
Djokovic beats Thiem at the Australian, and then Djokovic Federer play, but if Federer had won that, we would have it's still the same. Like
yeah,
the fact that the guy that wasn't supposed to win won, like the non goat win, that was like
yeah. That's
probably the
what's made it big.
biggest.
Yeah,
What was the biggest moment from it?
yeah. Dominic Thiem as well. God, talking about him. Oh, that's gonna make me sad. Oh, T, well, no,
He's
he
not that
lost.
old.
Well, he lost in the second round
Yeah,
of 250 today or yesterday, I think it was,
yeah.
on clay as well. He just not quite. That I really do feel. Did you watch the Tsitsipas team match? You must have. That match, I was thinking like he was so close to winning it. I was like, if he just won that match, that would have been. I feel like he needs one of those marquee wins over a top 10 guy, and if he does it, you're like, okay, this
Mhm.
is going to really boost your confidence and it's going to really help like propel him back. I'm not saying he's going to necessarily be in slam finals again, but I just feel like it's going to help the process. I just
Yeah.
feel like he hasn't had that. He's had so many close matches against some top players, losses in tiebreakers as well. And you're just like, oh, come on, like just get over the line. I mean, what do you think actually? Did you watch that match at all?
I think I watched the first, and then it rained, and then I didn't get
Yeah.
back to it. But I did see the score. Yeah, yeah, he did. That would have
The
been
tennis
nice,
was
and then
really
would have
good.
seen.
He was playing
Yeah,
well. His forehand as well looked good.
it would have been good to see him play Murray.
Yeah. Yeah.
As well, because then you would have gone. It would have been a win-win for fans. Like, oh, Murray would have got. If he won, it would have gone on to maybe play Eubanks in the fourth round, or if Team had won, you would have thought, oh, he's in a fourth round, which is great for both them.
Yeah.
Instead, Tsitsipas gets through both, and then you lose it to Eubanks, and you're like, oh, he like kind of robbed us of that Medvedev match that we always want to see. But yeah, I agree. I think a team. I mean, I'd love to see a team take on one of these young kids. We've seen him play Zverev. We've seen him play, Medvedev recent, like in the last probably year or two. I'd love to see him take on Alcaraz and see like at the US Open, or see him play Runa at the US Open and just see what that looks like.
You think they're gonna
Not that he
pump him
will
up,
win.
do you?
I don't know. I don't know if he'll get whooped by them. Maybe he does. Maybe losing straights. But like, I don't. It'd just be an interesting. Like that could be an opportunity. Maybe against Runa, because Alcaraz is just way crazy. But like someone like that, and maybe get him, because he's had some good matches. Well, he's won the US Open, hasn't he? So, and he has pushed Rafa to 5 at the US before team. So might be a place that he's happy to play. And then you play someone like Runa, who's maybe the favorite, and then there could be an epic. Like, I mean, if this happens, geez, if they if they somehow meet at the US Open this year, that'd be insane. But
First round.
yeah, I mean, that would be the first round of. It would be awesome to see. But yeah, I'm with you. I think he just needs that. He just needs that big, like a top 10 win, and not necessarily on clay, because if he does it on
Yeah.
clay, it's like, well, it's kind of expected. We kind of like, well, yeah, but if he does it on a hard court, like to do it on grass would have been crazy to beat Steph.
Yeah, I feel like I agree. It needs to be on grass or hard. Like, and the
Yeah.
thing is, if he'd done it on grass, it would have been crazy because I just felt like,
Mm.
okay, well, you've never really been that good on grass in your career anyway, even
Yeah.
when you were like at your best. So
Yeah.
the fact that like you were able to beat Steph is like a pretty big. And I know Steph hasn't since the Australian Open hasn't really played the best, but
Mm.
he's still played okay. So you're like, okay, um, yeah, interesting. So what do you think? We'll wrap up on Alcaraz Djokovic, but do you think is it the passing of the torch then? Is it happened, or is it okay? Well, we have to kind of, yeah, okay, it's starting slowly. There's a transition happening, but Djokovic, he still looks like he's going to be there or thereabouts U.S. Open, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down. He lost on the day to someone who's coming through and he's playing incredible tennis.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard like, I think people wanted to be changing the guard because we all want that. Like, that was the match that
Yeah,
changed. Like, one generation ended and the new one,
yeah,
Federer and Sampras 2001. Like, everyone points to that, right?
yeah,
I I don't think if Djokovic wins the second set, we're not talking about it the same way.
Yeah.
And even though Alcaraz won, not everyone else is like Alcaraz. So like I heard like you always hear like, oh, if Alcaraz does it, then will everybody else believe they can do it? Probably not, because no one can beat him. Like Alcaraz has the wood over everybody else in the draw too. So it's like I don't think Medvedev and Tsitsipas are looking, or even Sinner's looking at, oh well, Alcaraz did, I can do it next, because Sinner got whooped by Djokovic. So he's like, well, how can I do
Yeah.
that? And then
Which must frustrate him as well, though, because like he has so many close matches against Alcaraz and he's beaten him. I think they're like head-to-heads equal, very close.
yeah,
He must be thinking, how the hell is he beating him? And I can like, I'm giving Alcaraz a tougher game than Djokovic gave him. I beat
yeah,
him last year at Wimbledon as well. I think it's the styles, though, isn't it? Like people
yeah,
forget that, like styles. They say in boxing, styles makes fights, and I think that's the same in
mm-hmm.
tennis. Like it does really make a difference. Like, I just feel like he's got that. So it's like Medvedev always gives, like, he might necessarily beat Djokovic, but he always gives Djokovic like headaches because he's just like he can match him and
Yeah,
he's a backboard, and Djokovic hates playing because he gets dragged into these super long rallies.
yep,
But then and Steph and Medvedev, you feel like okay, that's normally like very close, but then Steph gets trounced by Djokovic when they play. It's like okay, well, it's
yeah,
normally very different, like the dynamic there. So yeah,
yeah,
I don't think it's a weird one. Like changing of the guard I feel like it's all very retrospective, though. You can kind of look back on it and say,
exactly,
"Oh,
yeah,
maybe that was a moment," but it's difficult to know. But I'm glad that at least someone's doing something. Like these guys need to step up. So I
yeah,
love the big three. I love Djokovic. I love Nadal. I love Federer. Federer is now not here anymore. And it's just like, but Nadal has probably one more year left, and it's
mm-hmm.
like these guys can't just let Djokovic dominate the next 5 years, winning every single slam like whenever he wants. Like people need to step up. Like
Yeah,
he's most likely going to win at least one more slam, at
yeah,
least. So let these other guys now start to come through and do something. And like I don't know, because the generation of the Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Zverev, and whatever, I'm just like, well, Medvedev's on one, team's on one, great. The other
mm-hmm.
guys, though, I'm just like, are you ever going to win one? Because the problem is now
Yeah,
Alcaraz is here. He's
yeah,
not going anywhere now. He's at the top. Rune's close. Like, in the semi-finals of Wimbledon, he barely had any grass court experience as well. And before it
yeah,
was like, well, Tsitsipas and Medvedev and Zverev, well, they haven't played that many grass court matches, right? They've only played like whatever 20, 25 matches.
yeah,
But it's like, well, Rune had played like 5. It's like,
yeah,
well, like, what's your excuse if he's able to do it? Why couldn't you? Why can't you guys do it? It's like, it makes
yeah,
zero sense to me. And then you got Casper Ruud saying that, like, and like, I love Casper Ruud. He's made 3 finals. I get it. But then they're saying like, oh, grass is for golf and stuff. And it's like, are you even going to
mm,
try playing on grass? Like, it just seemed like the match that he lost, where he lost in 5
yeah,
sets at Wimbledon. I was like, well, you lost to Liam Brody, who, okay, he's like a solid grass court player, but do you want to go and have a look at his ranking and tell me that you should be losing to him? Like,
yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
just,
definitely an attitude. Like it's kind of like Medvedev on clay, last year or the year
yeah,
before, and the year before, like coming in with like I hate this surface attitude,
yeah,
you're always going to lose. So
yeah,
it would be nice to see. I mean, look, if Alcaraz can win Wimbledon, Ruud's, you know, just not as good of a clay quarter as Alcaraz, but definitely has a lot of the same things that Alcaraz does. I mean, he can still hit a mean shot. He's still got a good enough serve. So Ruud should be making he can make a quarterfinal of Wimbledon if he
yeah,
put in the effort and doesn't play maybe a big server. But but like with the other guys, it almost feels like, well, when you brought up Zverev, like, when Zverev came along, it was like, oh, he beats, I think he beats Djokovic in a Master 1000 final.
yeah,
Okay, this guy's the next serious thing. But then it just always feels like those guys are like, well, when they retire, we'll get ours. Once,
yeah,
Medvedev got his, okay, cool. We've made finals, Zverev and whatever, they've all made finals. Tsitsipas, Berrettini. Okay, we've made finals. But when Djokovic is gone, then we'll get to finally win. Whereas Alcaraz, it doesn't seem, and same with what I'm seeing with Rune, it's like, we're not going to wait for them to go because, you know,
we
Djokovic
want
could
it
be around
now.
for five,
Yeah,
10 years. And like, you don't know
yeah,
how
yeah,
long he's going to stick
yeah.
around for.
They're like, we want it now as well, right? I feel like those
Yeah,
guys were
yeah,
like, well, Djokovic will go, and then it's our turn, and it's like,
yeah,
but what about the guys below you? Like, there's going to be
yeah.
the guys that were you coming through, but they might be more ambitious. They might be like, no, I want it now. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because like I heard like Zverev saying, I think he said something like, you know, oh yeah, like we were playing in the era of like these guys, and so I think we might have to wait until they get a bit older or like retire, and then we'll have a better chance. And it's how can you speak like that? Like, it's just like, why don't you try and beat them now? Like, I feel like there's so much respect, and I get it. Like, these guys, I get the generation's hard. I do get it, but at the same time, it's like, you guys aren't bad players, and like, as people, like, you watch so many matches, Cam, as well. Like, you should, like, you'll tell me as well. Like, these guys have the ability to do something. You can't tell me that they should be losing to these guys as much as they're losing to them constantly. Like, and in finals and stuff as well. And I feel like it is like the fact that Tsitsipas was 2 sets love up against Djokovic in a Roland Garros final, his first ever Grand Slam final, tells me that he has the ability to then do something from that position.
Yeah.
To then like capitulate mentally and like drop the way he did is like, okay, well, there's something not quite right there, right? And then Australian Open final this year, it's like, oh, I had a good Australian Open, like, because I made the final, first time ever. I lost Djokovic in straight sets. Doesn't matter. Look, I beat some good players on the way. It's like, well, not being funny, but no one's gonna remember. No one's really, unless it's like an epic Grand Slam final. No one's gonna remember whoever lost. Like in 5-10 years time, I'm gonna be like, did this pass make Australian Open final? Like
we don't
like,
count finals though. Like I think
I
think John McEnroe might have said this. He said this something similar. Like it's like you shouldn't be happy to make the final.
Yeah, 100%.
Like you should be happy unless it's your first final and like you're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't be happy to lose in the final. It doesn't matter who you lose to because it's like we're not going to be like, well, Tsitsipas made 7 finals.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I'm saying about Casper. Like Casper's made 3 finals, right? We'll go to Ons Jabeur in a second because that's a really big topic to talk about. But like Casper, he's made 3 finals, and I'm just thinking, well, you know what? Like, I get that he's played really tough opposition. I get it. But the problem is, if he retires and he hasn't won a slam, no one's going to be like, well, he made like 4 or 5 finals. He was a really good player. It's like, yeah, he was a good player, but didn't win anything. So no one's going to care. Even with Zverev, like, he's won the Olympic gold.
Yeah.
Okay, great. But then so's, like, again, no offense to Brenda Bencic, but she hasn't won a slam. So it's like, she's won a gold as well. Are these guys really going to be remembered as, like, greats? No. Like, if they don't win a slam, then
they won't even get in the Hall of Fame at this rate. Like that's like getting a gold medal. Like you have to have a slam or at least a final, and I think maybe you have to have a slam to be in the Hall of Fame. So it's like, well, if you want to be an all-time great, you need, even the ones who win a flukish slam have more of a chance than someone's made a bunch of finals, or you get put on the list of best to never win, and you're like, well,
best to never win.
Yeah, God. Best to never win one. David Ferrer and all these guys we mentioned. It's like, cool. Do you want to be known as one of those, which you'll remember forever for the wrong reasons? Or it's just hope like now with Alcaraz coming along, it's like, well, what's is the excuse going to be? Well, I lost Alcaraz, and you're like, well, he's not going to retire before these guys in their late 20s, so you're gonna have to figure it out or never win one. So
exactly, it's like when I think Zverev lost to Alcaraz in Madrid last year or something, and he was like, he was like, you know what? He said, I knew he was going to be really good, but he's like, I didn't think he's going to be that good this early. And I was like, oh, you know what? Like, we'll be able to beat him and stuff because we're older, but like, he's here now and we're going to have to deal with him. And Tsitsipas was like, when he lost to Alcaraz as well recently, he was saying, I think it was at Roland Garros, wasn't it? I think he lost him, and he goes, you're an inspiration to me and stuff like that. I'm like, I get that he's saying like you're inspirational because he's a really great player, but it's like, you do realize he's like 4 or 5 years younger than you. Like, you should have a bit of like, you know what I mean? Like, just come on.
Like, instead of being like respect, that, it's like, I know, like, respect the goats. Like, I get it, but like,
it's either too much respect or hit a ball at him at the net trying to smack it. It's like, can we have a bit of a medium here where you're trying to compete properly?
Yeah,
I just love it. It's so funny. But anyway, yeah. On the men's side, then, like, apart from Djokovic Alcaraz, that final, like, what was you watched so many matches? Like, what was your favorite match to watch?
I mean, Murray versus Tsitsipas was fun.
Yeah. I was gutted about that. I can imagine.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, I mean, the curfew killed so much momentum in the first week for so many players. But yeah, like that was a fun one. I mean, Hurkacz Djokovic was fun for the 4 sets. Like that was really interesting to see. This, like that's probably the best I've seen Hurkacz play for a
Yeah, I was
while,
so
at least like
happy as well that he
consistently.
pushed him. He
Yeah,
like he didn't capitulate. I was especially after the first two set tiebreak because I thought he was going to lose in straight sets. I think I
yeah,
said it like when the curfew hit, but I was so happy that he like regrouped. I was impressed by that.
yeah, yeah. And then Rublev, Bublik was a good fun one as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I was really rooting for Bublik. What were you? I was
yeah,
really hoping. I was thinking, you know what? I just want to see him come up against like a Djokovic or someone and just see how he gets on,
yeah,
because he's got big weapons, right? Like I thought he'd have a better chance against Djokovic than like a Rublev because I just think
yeah,
Rublev's got the mental scarring and he tends to always lose. Like the matchup's not great, but I think Bublik
yeah.
like yeah, I get like he's not as higher ranked, but he has like the massive serve and the really weird game that can kind of be a bit awkward to play against.
He would have frustrated, like he would have done underarm serves and all the things that I didn't see anybody outside. Maybe he did it in the first round,
Yeah,
do any underarm serves or anything like
yeah,
that. I didn't feel like we had any of those kind of highlights. And then Eubanks Medvedev, which I didn't get to watch, but that one was, I mean, just the whole like the Eubanks, even Eubanks City Pass. You know, again, I
yeah,
didn't get to watch it, but he was so much fun to watch. And once he got it going, I think a lot of like because Fritz lost early and Tiafo lost early, and all the big Americans lost pretty early, and
yeah.
then he
Order
kind of
as well,
comes out
first
and just
round. Yeah.
starts knocking out like taking on these big top 10 guys, and he takes one out, and so he'll be fun to watch as well. But and his game, he's got a one-handed backhand which everybody loves, and he's 6'7". He's got this big serve, and he comes to the net, and it's all this. It's so random. So he's going to be fun. But
Yeah,
yeah,
he,
so
he
those
he
are
had the
probably some of
most
the bigger.
winners ever in Wimbledon as well. Like flipping heck,
Yeah, yeah, and he was
unbelievable,
on the top of the ace count, ahead of
unbelievable.
like the guys that had the her catches and stuff. So, um, yeah, so those are probably the ones. I mean, I can't think of any other ones. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, they're great matches to be honest. And yeah, it's great to see Eubanks. He beat what Nori Tsitsipas.
yeah, Nora as well.
2 sets to 1 up against Medvedev. Like yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and a
27.
tiebreak before they could have taken him out, and
Yeah, I know. I was thinking. I was like, it was close. He's close, but um, yeah, I don't know. Corder as well is disappointing because you're talking about Americans, but he
mm,
lost in the first round after saying I'm one of the favorites. It's like, oh, you better back it up. No,
no.
no,
As
no,
soon as he
no,
said
no.
that, he lost. He lost. I think he said it, and then he won a match, and then he lost to Alcaraz, and then he loses in the first round. You're like, yeah, just don't say that. don't
Yeah, he
don't
won't
say
be
you're
saying that
going
for
to
the
do
US
anything.
Open. I'll tell you that after that, and
Yeah,
also the pressure on the Americans. Oh man, we'll talk
yeah,
about that later. That's crazy, crazy.
yeah.
Is there anything on the men's you want to touch upon before we jump onto the women's?
No, no, I don't think there's much. I mean, I think disappointing. I was more like in terms of like epic matches. There was those ones, but
Yeah,
then the disappointing matches, like the Rune Alcaraz match, was supposed to be 5 sets, and the Medvedev Alcaraz
yeah,
match was supposed to be even Berrettini Alcaraz was supposed to be more supposed to be closer.
yeah. I didn't
You
get.
know,
I heard you saying on your stream you didn't really get why people were saying Berrettini, and I agree with you. Like why
yeah,
Berrettini was going to push him. And I get that Berrettini had a really good win over Zverev.
yeah,
He played barely any matches before Wimbledon. And to be fair, he like suddenly found some really good form,
mm-hmm,
which is like really random to be honest. But that Senego first round I think helped like get them.
yeah,
He had to win in 5 sets. He really had to battle, and then he kind of was like, okay, I'm here. Like I'm ready.
yeah,
But like I thought Alcaraz would beat him in 3 or 4. I was like, I
mm-hmm,
don't see. Even though Alcaraz had never made it past that round of 16, I just thought the game, like the matchup, isn't great. Like I feel like Berrettini has weaknesses that Alcaraz will just exploit. And even though he's a
yeah,
massive server, Berrettini, I just feel like Alcaraz should be able to neutralize it to some degree, and he did
yeah,
um, quite well. But I'm interested to see what happens with Berrettini going forward because he's another player. I'm like, does he have the game to win a slam? But he's limited, but what he does is very good.
yeah,
But is he able to mask his weaknesses enough to get through 2 weeks and win a slam? And I'm like, I'm not sure. Because he's made so many quarterfinals and semifinals, and obviously with a one final. And I'm like, he's not getting any younger though, and he seems to have these massive like injuries like constantly.
mm,
Um, but yeah, that was disappointing,
yeah,
I think, as well. Alcaraz Rune one was weird because Rune said after like I didn't feel that great, and there are 3 competitive sets, but it was just like
yeah,
I feel like I was watching it, and I was thinking that Rune's forehand though, he needs to improve it like on grass, because
yeah,
on clay it's like I know sometimes when I watch it, it's so like loopy, and sometimes he drops it really short as well. And it kind of reminds me a
Yeah.
little bit of Zverev actually, which is a bit of a weird thing to say, but
Yeah.
sometimes with
Okay.
Zverev's forehand, he'll just hit a super loopy like high top spin ball on the forehand side. And Rune,
Yeah.
to be fair to him, he tries to like press and like attack, but
Mm.
what happens is I feel like he sometimes goes back to bad habits when he's on the back foot and he's rushed on the forehand, and he ends up just like, okay, I'm just going to loop this trying defensively. And it ends up being like a short ball mid court, and you're like, Alcaraz is going to eat you alive when you do that. And that's exactly what
Yeah.
he was doing. He needs to try and figure out how to hit a lot of balls on the forehand in and deep flatter on like
Yeah.
grass and hard courts, because it's clearly he's got the defensive game. Everyone knows that. Like he's incredible defending. That's how he won the Paris match against Novak. But
Yeah.
and the passing shots and his serve looks like he's bulked it up 130 miles per hour. He's touching. I was like, that's good. Like he's making strides. He's got great hands as well. Good drop shot. But I feel like
Yeah.
that forehand, like offensive forehand skills, needs to improve. And if he does, that's when then I feel like he can start challenging like Alcaraz and stuff. Even though he had a winning record against Alcaraz going into it, they
Yeah.
wasn't in Grand Slams. So,
And it
yeah,
was a retirement win. Yeah, he had a. Yeah, he played Alcaraz. Yeah, what, Paris last year indoors, and
yeah,
it was retirement
indoors,
win. So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, but no, I even like on the bottom half, like Djokovic Sinner after what happened last year, thought it'd be closer, but
yeah,
again it was 3, and then Rublev, man, we don't expect much from him against Djokovic. So like there was more disappointing, like even though there were high profile matchups,
yeah,
like all the matches that we want to get when we get to the quarterfinals. Yeah, I feel like there was more of those like disappointing ones than there was like the final made up for all, because I think especially because of all the rain,
yeah,
once we got to the quarterfinals, it was kind of on the men's side, it was kind of like, man, it's just been raining, it's been interruptions, we haven't really had a good match, and then there was no real. Then the Medvedev match happened with Eubanks. Okay, semi-finals were basic, and then the final kind of made everyone forget and go, that was the best Wimbledon ever, because that final was epic. And we all forgot about the first 13 days, but it was I feel like the quarterfinals overall and the semis were pretty for the men were pretty were not as good as
yeah,
what they could have been.
yeah. Unfortunately, the Medvedev Alcaraz match I kind of called because a
Mm.
lot of people were saying to me when I posted my prediction there, I was getting a lot of like stick, like, oh, Medvedev's gonna beat him, and like Medvedev's got you're what are you talking about? Medvedev is like an elite server and returner, and he's gonna push him. And I was like, you know what? Like, I hope it. I was saying, I hope he does. Like, I really like Medvedev, but I just said I just don't think like the styles match up well for him. I just think he struggles with Alcaraz because Alcaraz, what he does when he plays Medvedev is he almost like I feel like he steps up his shot tolerance level and he really takes it as a
Mm-hmm.
challenge to say, you know what, I'm going to be as patient as you, but I'm going to be offensive when I can, and I'm going to basically hurt you. And then also Medvedev just stands so far back behind the baseline, and he just says, "I'm going
Yeah,
to serve volley, I'm going to serve out wide, I'm going to kill you with the drop shot, and then I'm going to push you back, and good luck trying to get there." And then he'll come forward and he takes time away from Medvedev, and you're just like, not really sure that the matchup's good. And
yeah,
the Indian Wells final, you're like, okay, it's a different surface and it's a bit slower, but I'm like, but what Alcaraz was doing, he could do on any surface against Medvedev. That's the
yeah,
problem.
true.
And unless Medvedev figures out a way to negate it, like he goes crazy and starts standing on the baseline to return, which I don't think he's going to do,
Mm.
then I don't see a way around it, to be honest with you. So that was a
Yeah,
shame, but
Medvedev was it was so frustrating because I thought I was one of those, Medvedev's going to do something.
yeah,
Because I just thought he had a better, like the serve was going to be doing something,
mm,
but like that wasn't really a factor. And then it was just so infuriating to watch Medvedev like play the first set where it was sort of close early,
yeah,
and then once Alcaraz started to figure out what Medvedev was doing to him and figure out a solution, Medvedev didn't change. And
exactly,
I
yeah,
was like, man, like just like there was no, like the first couple of games was like, Medvedev started something, then Alcaraz did something else, then Medvedev countered that, and you're like, oh, here we go.
yeah.
And then after like half an hour, Medvedev just didn't counter whatever Alcaraz was doing, and you just kind of
Didn't
like,
adjust, yeah.
stayed on the baseline, 20 meters back, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Just didn't change, and then you just got angry, started serving big second serves and missing, and you're like, this is never going to like. He
yeah,
just kind of threw it in, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, no, it's weird. I feel like that's a generational thing though. That
Mm.
generation, they struggle to have more than like a plan A.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's
Berrettini,
yeah.
like with Berrettini, you're like, you know what you get. Zverev,
Big hammer. Yeah,
Zverev, you're like, okay, he's got two plans, but really it's how he's feeling on the day. It's not like he's got two plans that he can sift in and out of. It's like, how's he feeling on the
yeah,
day? Is he feeling like he's confident and he's going to go for shots, and then, or is he just going to push it back into court and like try and be cautious? And then Medvedev, we know how he plays the backboard.
mm,
Um, so like even with team, to be fair, I mean, I guess team play a super offensive game, which made him dangerous. But
yeah,
did he have so many layers to his game? Not really sure, to be fair. Or does he have so
yeah.
many layers?
It's kind of crazy, like because that generation, the guy that we don't talk about enough is Rublev because
Yeah,
he didn't match up well against those guys because he was
yeah,
more like aggressive and erratic and he's
yeah,
more emotional. But then you watch, like I would love to see him play Alcaraz in the next
yeah,
couple, like over on the hard courts because he plays Runa at Monte Carlo, he plays him in Australia, beats him in five.
yeah.
Plays him in Monte Carlo, beats him there, and you go, is like Rublev's style, was he just 5 years too early? Because he's kind of got the like he can
He
volley,
does,
you
yeah,
know, but he's just more emotional than the Alcaraz, and he's fit enough. And you go, I wonder if Rublev was maybe if he was 20 years old with Alcaraz and that, we'd probably be talking about him a lot more. But because he's in that other generation with the more defensive guys, I reckon it would be really cool to see Alcaraz Rublev, in Cincy or something,
yeah.
to see how
Mops
that
up
matches up.
forehands.
Yeah, it'll just be like they'll just be trying to belt each other.
Yeah,
We haven't seen him with Runa, so like Runa and Rublev is a great matchup.
yeah, yeah.
So it'd be
Yeah,
really cool to see.
that's a great like clash of styles, isn't it? I feel like
Yeah,
when you get a matchup where two players play so differently, that's when you get really hyped for it. Because this is gonna be
mm,
great. And like Alcaraz Rublev though is interesting because the forehand, like forehand to forehand's just gonna be who can hit it harder in the end.
yeah,
It's gonna be crazy. That'll be fun to watch as well. No, for sure.
yeah,
You okay to move on to the women's?
yeah, yeah.
Jump on. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the final we're gonna address that first because that was unfortunately pretty disappointing. I think in terms of the level. I think Vondrousova obviously
Mm,
stayed pretty solid, and it was impressive given it was her first Wimbledon final. I know it was her second Slam, but her first Slam final was 4 years ago against Ash Barty, so on a clay court at Roland
yeah,
Garros. So I think she only won 4 matches on grass coming into it, so pretty damn impressive. Jabeur obviously
yeah,
third Grand Slam finals. So that's same as Casper, which we were talking about earlier. But I think it's fair to say she has had, in the caliber of history anyway, in the scheme of things, she's had easier opponents in comparison to Rude because Rude's played goats or generational talent
yeah,
in Alcaraz. Jabeur's played Rebecca. She was a favourite, like to beat her. Both players were playing their first Grand Slam final. Then
mm-hmm,
Swiatek, I'm like, fine, US Open. She's expected to lose that.
yeah,
Understandable. It was pretty close, but like she lost in straight sets. This one, you're like, okay, unseeded player in the final, and she's just come off beating Grand Slam champions back to back to back.
yeah,
You're like, you've just beaten Andrescu, who's found some decent form on grass, and like
mm,
beating her in 3 sets. You just break down the third set, fought back. Okay, so up here you're looking quite good. Beat
yeah,
Kvitova in straight sets, bageled her as well. Like Wimbledon champion twice. You're like, okay, great win. And then Rebecca, revenge for that, defeating serving for them set in the first set, lost in a
yeah,
tiebreaker. You're like, oh, I was watching that in Turkey, like I was saying, thinking, oh no, like she's gonna capitulate now.
yeah,
And she wins the second set and then beats Rebecca in three. You're like, okay, right, what's going on here? You're like, well, Sabalenka. I'm like, well, that's my favorite. She could get blown away from her. Head to head isn't in her favor as well.
yeah,
And like Sabalenka is probably, you could argue, the most informed player this year. She's had the best results, right? She
yeah.
won Australia, semi-final of the French, now semi-final of Wimbledon.
Probably the most consistent
Exactly,
player. Yeah,
100%, yeah. And which is funny because you wouldn't necessarily attribute consistency to her game, but she's added that. To be fair, she has. She
yeah,
hits bigger targets. She does.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, like you're like, okay, I'm thinking she might get blown away. Loses the first set. I'm like, oh, okay, she's a breakdown in the second set. I'm like, okay, she's a set and a breakdown. And then she recovers somehow, like just digs
mm,
super deep, manages to win, and you're like, okay, that's really impressive because she's not only is she beaten 4 Grand Slam champions, she's beaten in my eyes the two players who I thought were the top two favorites, and Rebecca and Sabalenka back to back. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, if you've beaten those guys, going to no offense to Vondrousova, but I think we can safely say she's not on paper anyway as good a player as Rebecca and Sabalenka.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, now you could say she is because she just won a slam. They've all won one slam each, to be fair. So who might say it? But Jabeur going into that, you're like, okay, she should beat an unseeded player, right? In Vondrousova, she's barely won any matches on grass. The top half of the draw as well, like, let's be fair, apart from Swiatek, because she didn't have to face. She faced Svitolina, who played well, but her run was a lot easier.
Yeah.
Surely she gets through this. This should be, like, easier. Like, she should get through this routine. She goes in, she's 4-2 up in the first set, and then it's like, okay, alarm bells. Like, well, what's going on here? And then it's just all downhill, and it's like, it's crazy. I mean, what do you think happened? Like, you're watching it live. I mean, what happened? And was it nerves? Was it like, oh no, this is like a massive chance to me? Was it just super like negative, mentally went like she's got an issue in finals? Like, what do you think happened? Like watching it,
I think there's probably there's three things I reckon. The first one is that she had to play 4 Grand Slam champions. If you have to play those players, usually like you would play Kvitova in a quarterfinal, Rebecca in a semi, and then Sabalenka in the final, and then you win the trophy.
Yeah.
So having to beat them a day, like a round earlier, and then having to play that extra match after you beat Sabalenka, and like that fight, maybe she played her final in the semi, because you come back from the dead, you win in 3, you beat the number 2 in the world. I mean, Mukova did the same, right? Mukova played an epic match in the semis, but then, I mean, she went on to play Swiatek, which is way harder than you would say Vondrousova in a final of a slam because of Swiatek on clay. And then, so you do that, then you get to the final, and then you play at someone you've lost to twice this year, which the first time was close, but then you had a knee problem, so you can maybe make an excuse for that. Then she loses again at, I think, Indian Wells. So you've got a bad record against this lady too, and not like Vondrousova is not like the flashiest player either. So like when I was doing like the preview for it, I noticed that everybody that Vondrousova played hit more errors than winners, and it was like bad, like a lot of errors. It wasn't just like, she just drags the matches down quality wise. So I wasn't expecting it to be this amazing, entertaining match in the final, because I got the chat messages were just like, a lot of people in the chat were just like, this is the worst final I've ever seen. Like, that's what it was supposed to be, because Vondrousova is not going to play.
She makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. She's gonna. And when you play tennis, when you play someone who kind of hacks the ball and lobs it and loops it, and you can't get any pace on the ball, and that you got to try and generate everything. She does that, and that's she frustrated the hell out of Svitolina the same way, because Svitolina is a clean player, but she doesn't go for winners. She's a counterpuncher. So when you put them in a weird position, they just make errors. And then she did the same against Jabeur. Even at 4-2, it just was like I know a lot of people was like, oh, 4-2, she was winning. It was easy. It's like, no, she was getting in front, and then she was getting broken, and then she got back. It was just kind of this really ugly style.
It happened throughout. They got broken a lot, didn't they?
Yeah.
In the second set, she broke Vondrousova early, and she was a breakup again. Then she was like 3-1 up, and then Vondrousova broke her back, and then I was like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, Jabeur can't hold serve, and it was just so weird to watch. But
and I think Jabeur hit the most errors in that match for the whole tournament out of every match. But like also the players coming in, you go, okay, well, Andreescu, they're probably similar aggression. Kvitova is more aggressive, but Kvitova was playing terrible. Sabalenka, Rybakina, so you're like all these same sort of big serving, big hitting players, and then you play Vondrousova, who doesn't have a massive serve,
complete opposite,
who's just kind of doesn't have any of the things you've been playing. Whereas at least with Vondrousova, she came off the Svitolina match and Pegula, and you go, well, Jabeur is kind of in that category. Doesn't have a big serve, doesn't have these massive shots to worry about. So I think a lot of the road to the final was a factor as well. And she said it was like the worst loss of her career, or she felt like she felt the worst in her whole career. I think it's more because she was thinking that people are going to say this is my worst loss, because in hindsight, Rybakina wasn't a bad loss last year. Like, oh, she's number 3 now. She made it a final, but at the time it was kind of like,
she should have won.
12 months ago, we were kind of going, well, Jabeur, Halep, Jabeur in the semis, and then it was like, well, Halep loses to Rybakina, well, Jabeur's going to win.
Yeah.
and Rybakina wins, and now we're kind of like, oh, well, Rybakina was, of course she won. And then it's Swiatek in the US, right? We're all like, well, yeah, number one wins. But I think, look, I don't think it was that. Like the matchup was bad, the styles were bad. Like I think it was just like a really unfortunate. Like even though it wasn't the hardest match she's had, like not the hardest opponent compared to the.
Awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an awkward match, and maybe there's the mental level. I haven't won a final, but I think it was more just like all those other factors that came into it, and then just like, oh, here's a Grand Slam final, I'm going to lose again. I think she'll get to another one, and this time I hope she plays Rybakina or someone in the final that's like a. If she's the favorite in the final, or if she plays Swiatek, it's probably a
Yeah.
problem. But if she's the underdog against one of these, like a Sabalenka, where she knows she can beat them, or she can play someone like a Pegula or someone like that, because she has
Yeah.
won big finals against those players,
Yeah.
or at least against Pegula, she won a big final. So like. And she beats like even last year at the US, she beats Garcia, who was on an absolute tear at the end of last
Yeah.
year. She beats
She's
her,
got a
and
great record against Garcia. She's played Garcia
yeah,
in the slam final.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, she like smoked her last year and going to
Yeah.
the US Open final. So you're like, yeah, it's like it's not. It's just I think it's just like you just got to get the right opponent, because the
Yeah.
three opponents she's played so far, one was the best player on the planet, is the best player on the planet. The other one, really big hitter on grass. The other one, just a bad matchup and a bad timing, and maybe you, didn't feel great against her, or you didn't have a great record against her. And Vondrousova had nothing to lose, so there's always that factor too. The underdog can do whatever they want, and
Yeah.
she wasn't supposed to be there. And you said all about her grass court record; it wasn't flash, so it's like, well, all of those factors. But yeah, it was a strange final.
Yeah. It was really strange. And the thing is, I think the one thing, I guess, the one silver lining is that a lot of champions on the WTA side who've gone on to win multiple slams have actually lost their first like 3-4 finals. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Kim Kleiss was one of them. But although I
Mm.
talked to Gill earlier, and he was saying that you got to though cater in the fact that they were younger though. I think when that happened, whereas Jabeur's
Yeah.
a bit older. She's 27 now. She's not old, but she's really in
Mm.
her prime, you would say.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to cater. What I was going to ask you is, do you think she's going to win a slam? Because I did a poll on my YouTube actually on a community tab, and I said like, do you think she's not going to win one? Do you think she'll win one, or do you think she'll win multiple? And I think majority of people said that they think she's going to win one. 50% of people said that. 36% of people said not at all. And the
Okay.
rest remainder, which is 86, so it'll be 14% said that she won't win one. So she'd win multiple.
Okay.
What do you think? Where are you in that in that vote?
Yeah, I think she'll win one. Like she's made 3 finals in 12 months. And yeah, like the age thing may be a factor. Because I mean, like I think Clijsters was, she made all her finals before a certain age. And I think because I did something, I put a video out yesterday about the similar thing. And I was like, I think Halep also was 0-3. But then Halep won her first at like 26, 27. So you kind of like, she's kind of in that same realm. And then Halep had the number one burden as well, right? So at least she doesn't have that, like, oh, I was number one, I haven't got a slam. At least she hasn't got that to
Yeah,
also worry about, like
yeah,
Wozniacki did and all those kind of things.
yeah,
So I think she'll get one. I mean, she's, take Swiatek out of it. She can still beat, if you go down the whole top 10, like even with Swiatek, I mean, we haven't really got to see them play yet since, for 12 months. So get them on, since the US Open. So get them on a hard court, see what that looks like. She can beat Sabalenka, she can beat Rybakina, she's beaten Garcia, she can beat Pegula. Goff, she can beat her. Off the top of my head, I can't remember their record, but I'm sure she could get her. Who else is in that top 10? I can't remember the other half. Zachary, those kind of players. You go, well, yeah, you'd rate her chances against all of those players because she has proven she can beat them on big stages. So, I mean, we could, in 2 months' time, we could be talking about her as a US Open champion and not this. The whole conversation doesn't even matter
yeah,
anymore. So, I think if you're going to compare her to Rude, she's way more likely to win a slam than Rude. Like Rude,
yeah,
he's played Alcaraz, Djokovic, Nadal, probably the three hardest players to play
yeah,
in a slam final. But I would, if you take are they going to, Alcaraz isn't going anywhere. Whereas, Vondrousova, is she going to make another final and be the pain for Jabeur every single slam? Probably not. She's probably not going to make the final of the US Open and get in Jabeur's way again. Maybe they play early, but so I don't think she's got a big of a problem. And, she can beat Rebecca, and if she might, I mean, I don't know if she can beat Swiatek. We'll find out, but I think she'll get one. I mean, she played so well in the Australian Open. It was maybe 21 where she made the quarterfinals there, or 20. So she's like, she can play there. She can play the French. We've seen her do that this year. She almost made it to the semi. She loses a close one. She makes the Wimbledon final twice. She's made the US Open final. So she's got 4 chances, whereas some players only have clay or they only have Australia, right? So it's like at least she's got 4 chances every year to win a slam, and if she wins any of them, we won't be thinking, well, that was a bit strange that she won this one.
Yeah.
So at least she's got that going for her as well. So whereas with Ruud, right, you cross out Wimbledon, he's not going to win that. Maybe the US, Australia doesn't seem to start well, so he's only got like 2 chances out of 4.
Yeah.
Realistically, so yeah, so I reckon she'll get one. She'll get one, and if she gets one this year, then people will probably be starting to talk about, well, could she get 3, right? So it kind of depends when she gets her one. If she gets it in the next 12 months, then she might be able to get 2 or 3. But yeah, I reckon she'll get one. I mean, she's got too much variety. I mean, Barty has had 3, and she's the most similar to Barty.
Yeah.
Maybe not as good of a serve, but she's definitely got like the slice, and she's got the variety, and she can come to the net. She can do all the flashy things, maybe a little flashier than Barty, but I mean, she's as good. Well, she is the only thing we have that's similar to that now, because in the top 10, everyone else is either defensive or attacking.
She's got a
So
bit
I
of
mean,
flair.
yeah. So she'll get one. She'll get one, at least one.
Okay, Jabeur fans, you had it here. So if Jabeur doesn't win one, you can save this and taunt. You can haunt Cam forever. But yeah, Swiatek. I mean, do you think this is a big chance for her on grass? Because she had a really easy half. I mean, no offense to all those players in that half, but I mean, the bottom half had Jabeur, Rebecca, and Sabalenka. Do you think she should have? I mean, I know she'd never made a quarterfinal, so she made one this year, great. But do you think this is a opportunity missed for her to go a bit further, or is it just that the game's not developed enough really for grass yet?
Yeah, I reckon not just her. I reckon there was anybody in the top half.
Yeah,
it was a massive miss. I mean, Pegula, it was a massive miss. Bencic, it was a massive miss. Even Svitolina was a huge miss. Like you go, well, she's
she's going to get a better opportunity than that. I don't know.
Yeah, but for Swiatek, I get we'll probably find out in the next couple of years, because I mean, she beats 2 players pretty easily. She then beats, I can't remember who her third round opponent was. She played someone in the third round that was Martic, who was a close second set, and then Bencic took her the distance, which was probably expected. And then she loses Svitolina, who has more experience on grass. But then you probably expect her to beat Svitolina on most times. Maybe outside of grass, she beats her every other time. Who knows? If they play like Vondrousova, Swiatek would have been a really interesting semi-final. That could have gone either way. And then the final against Jabeur, you would have gone, well, you're not playing Rebecca, who's like your worst nightmare. Sabalenka's starting to figure you out on faster surfaces. Kvitova's not there, who could be a problem. You don't have all those players down the bottom. Like Ostapenko was down there. I think Krejcikova was down there. Like all these nightmares that even Keys was down there. Who again, and I think Haddad Maya, who all beat her last year. So it's like all the players that have been beating you are down the bottom, and you've got this run to the final where you get through Bencic. She should have. We might look back in a couple of years and go, yeah, that was her best draw, because next year she might have to play Ostapenko in the third round, or play someone with a massive serve, or something like. And this always seems to happen with, except for like the GOATs, whenever someone does really well at the French Open, like makes the final, look of it, right? Lost first round of Wimbledon. Swiatek wins the French last year, loses third round of Wimbledon. So it's kind of like, and Ruud, right? Gets the final, loses second round. So the better you do at the French, the worse you're going to do at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Overall, Team didn't do well at Wimbledon after we made French Open finals. Tsitsipas, I think, made the French Open final, lost in the first round. So it's like, unless she loses early at a French Open and gets more time on the grass, then it's probably like it might be a best opportunity, at least. Well, she's 22, so she's got at least 10 more minimum, unless injury. But it's going to probably one of the best draws she's going to get.
Yeah,
it's not going to get much better than that unless some of those players don't play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're not going to get all your worst nightmares. You're only going to have to play one in the final, unless Jabeur beats them all like she did. So yeah, it might be a missed chance if it's going to be a harder slam to win. I think she'll
100%.
win Australia before she wins the Wimbledon.
Yeah.
But it could have been this one could have been the best chance.
Yeah, I agree. I think once she needs to bulk up her serve a little bit, improve her net game, and then I think that will help as well. I think she's still not super comfortable on grass, and you can tell. So from the back of the court, she needs to kind of find a little bit of comfort, and I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will at some point, but we shall see. In terms of then matches on the WTA side, so obviously the final was disappointing, but what was your standout matches? Which ones did you really enjoy watching?
Well, I mean, Sabalenka Jabeur was amazing. Just the comeback and the drama. I think that might have been one of the longest matches as well.
Yeah, it was.
3 hours or over 3 hours. Swiatek Bencic was insane. Because Bencic has always been, and she loses, so maybe it doesn't count, but she's always been a threat. She's going to be, don't want to play her, but she doesn't really. When you think that, she doesn't show up.
Yeah.
So to see her show up and be because she played Swiatek at the start of the year in the United Cup and put it to a tiebreaker in the second. You're like, so you made a tiebreak in the first set. Maybe we've got something going.
Yeah.
And that's what she did. And she gets the second or gets the first, gets the match point, and then kind of falls away. But if it was good to see her kind of going, and she's been injured a lot. She had a great start to the year, and then injuries kind of stuffed it up. But so that was a great match just to see. Bencic makes it interesting against Swiatek because we're still trying to figure out, besides Rybakina and Sabalenka, sometimes who is going to be a threat to Swiatek, especially on the hard courts. But other than that, I mean, Pegula Vondrousova, I didn't get to watch that, but that looked like that final set was very Vondrousova coming back from 4-1 down or something to win at 6-4. So those kind of things. In the first, I can't really. I mean, Andreescu versus Jabeur was a fun match. I feel like that was a really good quality match too. And as an Andreescu fan, it's great to see her, competitive against the top 10 again. Rybakina Jabeur was good, but it never felt like Rybakina. She won the tie break, but it didn't feel like she was really It was a 3-setter, but it didn't feel close for the whole match. It felt like Jabeur was controlling the whole thing. I'm probably missing a whole bunch, but I can't really think of too many others.
I guess Svitolina Azarenka was a good one. I don't know if you watched.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was a good one too.
That was close.
That
Azarenka,
really
I was glad to see Azarenka do something on grass because I wasn't really expecting to do anything, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, there was those kind of those matches were all. I mean, it's funny because we all just remember the finals, and it's like if the final's not good, it kind of ruins the rest of the tournament because you're like, oh well, that final was bad, so the tournament was bad for the women's matches weren't that good. You're like, the final wasn't, but the rest were okay. But then on the men's side, you look at the opposite and you go, oh, there's the men's final was great. Oh, that tournament was awesome, wasn't it? And it's like, yeah, but not really. But the semifinals weren't great. So
agreed.
I think the real. I mean, everyone said the final was Sabalenka Jabeur. That was the final. Had the final atmosphere and had the final results. And then we got the final of the actual final, and it wasn't like that. The real final should have been that Sabalenka Jabeur match, but
yeah.
Don't
say that to Vondrousova fans. But no, she's
got a slam. I mean, they don't need our.
Yeah, that's it. Now she's there. She's there. That's it. She's part of it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see how she gets on. I'm intrigued because she said she's going to go under the radar. She's going to work. Hopefully, she can stay fit. Then let's see what she can do. It'll be intriguing to see. Maybe she'll be a threat, say, on the clay next year and stuff as well. And I'm intrigued to see how she pans out because too early to say now. But let's see. Let's see. Cam, is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Not really. I'm excited for the. I can't wait until we get done this hard court season again because it feels like forever since we watched a hardcore match. I mean,
True, yeah.
we're still on clay at the moment, which is a little bit
I
kind of
find it
like,
really weird that they go back to this little tiny clay
yeah,
court section. Like,
it's kind of just
weird.
annoying. Really. You're just like, I thought we were over that.
Yeah.
Casper go in
Either
overtime.
just like maybe stick in a couple more grass court tournaments or just go straight
Yeah,
to hard court. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
what do
yeah,
you think actually? By the way, I don't think I've asked you this. So, like cost aside, because I have no idea about like cost and like the dynamics of how much it costs in certain countries, etc. But do you think that the grass court swing should be bigger in the sense that like there should be more grass court events, and at the moment it's a couple of weeks or whatever, a few weeks, but 3 weeks I think it is, or 2 or 3 weeks.
mm.
And do you think there should be a Masters 1000 one for grass? Do you think it should be like more evenly spread out, hard court, clay, and grass, or do you think it's fine how it is? Like how would you schedule it if you were the head of
Yeah,
the ATP and WTA tours? What would you do if you had a clean slate to do whatever you wanted?
yeah. I mean, look, look at right now. This week, there's nothing. The only players that are playing this week are the ones that won extra points, or the ones that didn't play well at Wimbledon.
Yeah,
Or I think Rublev's the only exception to that. And then next week it's like a couple of hardcore matches. So I'm like, you could push Wimbledon a week and then add an extra week, so you get 4 weeks preparation for the 2 weeks on grass.
yeah,
So you can get a 6-week Wimbledon schedule. You could put a 1,000 in there. You could chuck a 1,000 in there on the third week, so you get French Open first week on grass with the 250s. Then you get the Queen's Club and stuff, and then you get a 1,000, and then you get a pre Wimbledon warm up. Like, I mean, look at all the other tournaments. French Open do the same. They get back to back Masters. Then you get a week for all the players that didn't do well at the
yeah,
Masters to get that extra preparation.
yeah,
Same at the US. You get the 2 weeks of Masters, and then you get the 1 week of like Winston Salem, and then you get the US. So I'm like, you could definitely do it. But would Wimbledon be willing to push back another week? Because then you end up at the end of July, you finish instead of mid July. So it's more like, will Wimbledon move? Because you can't move the clay because they're only getting, like, the clay season pushed everything back already because of the
yeah,
2 week Masters now. So, but yeah, I mean, every year we need a 1,000 on grass.
yeah,
And I think the only way you're going to get it, well, the players have to want it. And I don't think players want to feel like they have, like Djokovic, right? He doesn't want to feel like he has to play because a 1,000 event, we all love it, but it's also worth a lot of points. So you're going to make the decision whether or not you're going to give up 1,000 points for your opposition to get that boost
yeah,
before Wimbledon, so you get the rankings changed. So like, there's a lot more pressure than just
yeah,
we just want a big event, So, and it's only been maybe 6 or 7 years since we've had a 500 event on grass. Because I was looking
yeah,
at this in preparation for Wimbledon because I knew I was going to get asked, and it was like the grass season was sort of, you had 2 weeks and then Wimbledon, so you had 4 weeks total on grass, and then they upgraded Queen's Club to 500 and Halle to 500, and now it's like, well, now we want a 1,000. So it's like, yeah, it's they'd have to make it 4 weeks preparation because you can't really upgrade. Like, you can't have Grand Slam 1 week, 1,000 1 week Grand Slam. That's just way too way too cramped. So they'd have to spread it out more. But I don't know about, like, I like the grass, but also 6 weeks would be enough. Like, I don't think, like, it's always been in my head, like, you got the clay is slow, the grass is fast, and then the hard courts, a majority of the hard courts are neutral.
yeah.
So you want to, like, I'd always just, I mean, I think it's like, what, probably 50% hard court at least.
Yeah, that's the thing. That was really my point. Is that the tour's so hardcore dominant. I
Mm,
just feel like the reason why we don't have as many players that are as comfortable on grass, or like maybe not even on clay to a degree, I guess, although it's a bigger
mm,
swing. But where there's players that are just so hardcore, like dominant themselves in their style of play, that you just end up having players that play quite similarly. But then if you have more players being exposed to like grass, which is lower bouncing, fast surface, or clay, then you're going to get more and more players playing different styles, being specialists in different surfaces.
yeah.
Like you don't really see specialists on grass, really, in the
Mm,
sense that like they don't. If you were to ask them, I think like what's your favorite or specialist surface? Um, their game is still built though to be good on hard courts, because it has to be if they want to be
Mm.
have a decent ranking. You can't just play a couple of grass court tournaments and then do rubbish the whole rest of the year, right? Like they the hard
Yeah.
courts is so like big. So I think that was mainly my point. Like it'd be good to see a bit more variety, I think.
Well,
But
carpet used to
yeah,
be a massive thing, and that was sort
yeah,
of the indoor grass. So,
yeah,
like, I mean, I don't know if they're going to bring that ever, but that was sort of because yeah, it's right. You're right. I mean, it feels. I mean, look at the top 10 for the men. It's like, well, before the Americans sort of made the charge, it had 10 out of 10 of Europeans, and
mm,
then you're like, well, and most of those would have grown up on clay or at least
yeah,
or indoor hard courts maybe if you're in Russia, and you're kind of like, well, that creates a whole big. I mean, a lot of like the big thing in Australia is like, I mean, when I was growing up playing, it was like, well, if you want to be good, you have to go to Europe. Like you
yeah,
can't, it's very rare. I mean, there's not that many good Australian players, so it's like even Diminor, right? Our best, he went to Europe and trained. So it's like, well, that's the only most of the Americans might have a different way of doing it, but so it's like if you make more variety where there's, I mean, grass all year round. I don't know where you the maintenance and stuff. I mean, do you put it in?
I don't know. To be honest, I have no idea. I think
Yeah,
they
I don't know how
actually
they
they
would do
don't.
it.
So what happens is the grass dies and then you relay it
Mm,
basically towards the. So it's like basically just like they stripped. I think so.
mm.
Um, because I'm actually playing on a grass court later today.
Oh,
At
nice.
the Wimbledon Community Centre for the first time. So I played on artificial grass before, but it's
Yeah,
an actual. And it's basically all the Wimbledon players train on it during Wimbledon before,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they then let it open to the public straight after. So I've got
Nice.
in, got some. Yeah, I managed to secure a court. So we'll see whether what it's
You can
like.
tell us how it is then.
Yeah,
If you like,
I'll tell you, because I play on artificial grass in my club, but
yep.
I think it'll play differently to that, so it'll be interesting. Apparently, it's really nice to move on, like to run on
Oh
it.
yeah.
So we'll see. My little yeah, we'll see.
No.
Anyway, no, Cam, appreciate that. I just wanted to ask her because I thought it was an interesting topic. Quite a few
Yeah.
people, Anthony as well, who's part of the channel now. He's got like strong views like me on that. Like, let's get a bit more variety as well. And
Yeah.
some people, though, some subscribers have said, about the monetary factor, that it's a lot harder to maintain grass courts and clay courts, which is why we have more hard court
Mm.
tournaments. So it's more affordable, I guess, for countries that are maybe not as economically, um, well, they're not thriving as much economically anyway, that they're not able to really afford to build those courts, which I guess is understandable. But then that's where I guess it comes down to the countries that are like the US and the UK and these like countries, they have the money and like resources to do it. Just whether they're willing
Yeah.
to do it, I guess.
Well,
But
we've
anyway,
gone the other way though. That's the thing. Like
yeah,
with
you've got hardcore
like
central, haven't you?
Australian Open, everything used to be grass, and then
Yeah,
1980 whatever, we changed everything to hard court. I mean, same with the US. I think they were
yeah.
grass, then clay, then hard courts, and it's like, are we going to go back? I don't think they're going to rip up Melbourne Park and make it grass any. Like I don't think even Kooyong, like they got grass courts at the back, but their main stadium went hard court too. So it's like it's very unlikely that we're going to go backwards unless they find a new surface. I mean, or bring back carpet. I mean, carpet was fun,
Yeah.
especially at the
No,
end of
I had
the
a
year.
really weird thought that like you could have slams where each court is like a different surfaces. So you could have like court 2 is like grass, court 3 is clay, and it's just like just
That would
random. You just get picked in the draw and you just like random whatever player and
that would
whatever.
be cool. Someone's
And
going
you're
to
just
make an
like,
exhibition like that. That'd be
and you
fun.
that would be. I just
Have
thought
like the
I, I,
UTS they're doing. Get
I've got to
like
copyright this.
random.
I'm going to trademark this and sell my idea.
Have like
But,
4 different surfaces, and then all
yeah,
right,
exactly.
Kyrgios versus Alcaraz. That's going to be on grass today,
Yeah, and
and
you can
then
have
right, you just pick,
indoor hard, outdoor
yeah,
hard, and then you can have
kind of like
clay.
it's like the Davis Cup used to be when they had like you'd pick the home team would pick this
Yeah,
surface or something, like that kind of
yeah. Or you could
you know
even do like a flip of a coin. So you draw them. So you have like Kyrgios Alcaraz, and it's like, okay, you got a coin flip, and Alcaraz is like, okay, I've won at clay, and Kyrgios is like, no, I want to go on the grass. Like if he wins, so
yep,
that would
yeah,
be
yeah.
hilarious.
That's
Um,
something. There's something there.
that's so funny. Anyway, we'll see. Maybe they should do it for the tiebreak tens or something. They have that tournament, don't they? That'd be quite
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
cool.
True.
Cam, anything on your side before we wrap up?
No, that's it.
No.
I'll be
All right.
streaming the US Open. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, guys, if you haven't on Story, which I'm pretty sure you have, go and check out Cam's channel, Tennis Talk with Cam Williams, and also he's on Instagram and Twitter and Threads as well. Of course, can't
Yeah.
now exclude that. Of course, big social media platform coming through. But yeah, 150K now, right?
Yeah. Just hit that. So that was cool.
Very humble, very humble, and a 1 million stream as well for the final.
Yeah, I mean like that. I mean, you can say the same thing. It was one of the biggest, one of your biggest streams. I'm assuming too, right? I mean,
Yeah, so the biggest that we had
ridiculous.
was Nadal Medvedev last year, which is
Yeah, me too.
100K. Is that the biggest one still?
That was my biggest
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. So that was
Well,
100K, and then this one was 72, so not as big. I think, um, yeah, with the 1.3 million, I think you were like everyone's like yes, Cam, which is good because I was like I was watching actually in the background. I was like whoa, big numbers. I was loving it. I was like this is great to be honest with you. So
yeah,
no,
I
kudos
was.
to you as well, and also your hard work. I know you stream all the matches as well, so um, it's hard work. I know from doing the the smaller amounts of matches I do, that it's definitely a big commitment. So no, kudos to you as well.
Cheers,
And
mate.
yeah. Cool. Well, thanks very much, guys. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you need to go and check out Cam. I know you have already. Probably most of you guys are already part of there as well. I know you. So, and we'll see you. So this will probably be the last Wimbledon post review, analysis, etc. So basically, forget about the grass. Start thinking about the hard court because I'm going to skip this small clay court swing. I think little blip, and then let's get sorted. U.S. Open Series predictions, early predictions. I'm going to put them in soon because why not? Nothing else to do. Right, thanks, Cam. Appreciate it. See you guys
No
soon.
worries.